Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us tonight. We are a couple of quick announcements, I suppose, or one. We are recording this. It will be put up on our website within a few days, day or two. It usually takes that time to turn around, so that if there's anything that you want to go back and revisit, or any of your friends or neighbors who did not come tonight would like to see it, we'll have it up there, and it will stay up. Uh, all the videos we post, they all get archived and they stay up, so you can always find them. As you know, I'm the superintendent, Jack Hurley, and I wanted to have this opportunity to meet with you to talk a little bit about our security. I am joined in a good part of the presentation tonight will be made by our Chief of Police, Chief Russo, and also here tonight is Detective Al Anderson, who is our SRO and has been the school resource officer here since, I guess, 2002, Al, about that, 2001. He has served, for the most part, those last 15, 16 years, 17 years in that role. As I said, we're going to try to present some information to you. So there are things that you may know about that we do that you are going to hear, but there's going to be, I'm sure, some things tonight you're going to hear that you don't know. And the idea is to try to make you aware of what we do to be prepared for any and all type of emergency. So I'm going to take a few minutes to review some of the trainings that we do, the work we've done, the resources we've used over the last 20 years. And then I'm going to let the chief talk a little bit about the police involvement in the schools and with us in those plans and how they respond to things and how we look at and revise plans as we go forward. Okay? So hopefully we're not going to talk excessively long. We'll have maybe about 40 minutes or so, and then there'll be a little bit of time for any questions. And I do want to encourage you that, you know, it's whether you ask a question tonight or you don't, or whether there's time for that, whatever the case may be, if you email me or you email your building principal, or, you know, you email the police if you feel that's where you need to go, we will get back to you with a response, okay? So I want to start off by commenting about the high school today that did the walkout. And one of the things, it really was very well organized, very respectful and dignified program. Students who didn't want to participate, teachers stayed in their classroom and the kids could stay in. I think we had about 50, 60 students who opted to stay in. The supervisors, the administrators, the guidance counselors, child study team members who don't have classroom assignments, and teachers who did not have the class that period were asked to go out to monitor the students. Chief Russo met with me, and Detective Anderson met with me, and then they met with Mr. Morano weeks ahead to provide security so that streets were closed off and there was police around so that the students were secure. We asked parents not to come and visit. We asked students, not to have anybody come and see it. It wasn't a demonstration for a public show. It was for the students to have solidarity and support. And it really was. I mean, I was here and we had 600 or 50 or 700 kids. Mr. Morano went on the PA that plays outside, and he asked for everyone for a moment of silence. And then when that was over, the students walked around the block a couple of times to get the 17 minutes. And you could not really, there was no noise, there was no talking. It was just a little bit of conversation. Now, the reason why I'm bringing this up, we have done a lot of things here in the last several years. I'm not just talking about security, and we'll get to that. It's going to be a heart of what we're talking about. But the way we approach things is we try to be proactive instead of reactive. We try to respond instead of being reactionary. We try to plan. We try to take our time and do it the right way. So the State Department put out the first day after the event in Florida, they endorsed this walkout, but they didn't give any guidelines. They gave them about a week ago, talking about how to protect children out on the street. We had already had those meetings to talk about that. You know, if you saw Hackensack today, right? They had to cancel. And other schools had to cancel because of implying threats. We were putting our kids, if you think about it, the irony of it, in an unsafe situation to talk about safety and security. So we wanted to make sure we did it right. So the cooperation we have with the police, with our students, who met with the principal, who met with the administrators for a couple of weeks to plan this, the cooperation that we have to, those are how we approach a lot of what we're going to talk about tonight. Safety, you know, most of you know that I was the assistant principal here in the high school. Been here for 4 decades. Safety has always been a priority. I became the assistant principal the year Columbine happened. So from the first moment I became an administrator, everything about the way we run a school changed. I never knew any other way. I became the assistant principal. Every door in this building was open every day from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. Anybody could walk in and go anywhere they wanted to go. When I became the assistant principal, Columbine happened, and the feeling was, oh, you know, you don't have to lock doors. I mean, that's silly. The day I became principal, the next day I put a thing out, all the doors are going to be locked, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to do the other thing. And everybody, my God, you know, we used to have this different building before the last renovation where it was like a U, and you could cut, those of you that were students here, remember you could cut across. And oh man, the students, now we have to walk around the building. Well, they got used to that pretty quick. The point I'm making is how we do our business changed dramatically back in 1999. But safety is very important to me. I mean, in every aspect. I worry about, when I was a principal, I used to joke, I have to retire when I can't bend over and pick stuff off the floor anymore. I worry about kids tripping on stuff. I worry about kids walking too quick or running through the hall or doors opening. Or, you know, I mean, there's 1,000,001 things. It's not just the egregious, horrific things that make the national news. You have children, right? You have 1, 2, 3, 4 children. Think about all the things they could do to injure themselves or others or get hurt or well, we have 2,700 of them that rest on my head. So I worry about every aspect of safety. And just like you, I do my best every day to make sure they're safe. Just like you, I can't guarantee that I can take care of every potential problem, but I can guarantee that we're ready for it. And I want to talk a little bit about that. Since I became an administrator, you know, Columbine and Sandy Hook and Parkland, they stand out, right? But there's been lots of shootings, and not just in schools. In churches, in malls, in concert halls. There's been a lot in the last 20 years. In addition to that, in this building, so we have dealt with all of those, one way or another, right? We've dealt with them because for some kids, it becomes emotional trauma. For some kids, it becomes, maybe I'm going to mimic and copy that. Not that they're going to shoot, but you know, just the idea of a threat. We've dealt with the horror of 9/11, where we had, in this building, about 60, 70 students who had parents working there. We had about 30 faculty who had spouses or children working there. And thankfully, nobody lost anybody in this building. We lost people in this borough. And we could actually see the buildings burn from upstairs in the history rooms. And we had to keep kids safe, controlled, calm, and away from trauma. We dealt with a flood that took out 10 classrooms here. We've dealt with suicide of a student. We've dealt with deaths of students, deaths of teachers. And the reason why we have handled all of those things over the years, the best way any of those horrible things could be handled is because, believe it or not, we have a plan for everyone that's been developed with professionals and school personnel and is reviewed every year, practiced every year, discussed every year. We're constantly revising these plans. We constantly look not for conversation when you see something on the news, but we reach out for best practice from federal, state, local law enforcement and professionals. Before the events of last month, the following things happened this year, or are going to happen. We have upgrading all of the cameras, intercoms, buzz-ins, buzz-out at every building. Okay? They're being processed. We met with a vendor in October. You have to go through state. It's a whole bureaucratic thing when you buy stuff, but they're going to be getting installed this spring. We've added some additional 3M at exterior school doors throughout the district. We have put in carbon monoxide detectors. I'll get to that in a minute too, throughout the district. We have added to our digital district-wide radio system, which our SRO is lined in on. All of our administrators, all of our supervisors, all of our custodians, all of our nurses, all have radios where we communicate within and without the building. And every year we add more people to that. A change in state regs takes what I always was and now gives it a title of security specialist, which really means I'm doing the same things I always did with security, but because of the change, I just registered today. And this happened back in November. This is not, what I'm saying, none of this is a reaction to what happened last month. I'm going to be taking an online FEMA course in crisis management, and I'll be attending 4 days of training at the end of June by the state OEM. But over the last 7 years, I probably have attended 14 or 15 days of training by state OEM, Bergen County OEM, and several years ago on a national level out in Columbus, Ohio. We never talk about this. For one thing, if I stand up here and I say, oh, I do all this training, and all, it sounds like you're saying it, but I think people need to know. And it's not just me, as you're going to see, it's the administrators. Also this year, before last month, we have begun plans with the police to start our second round of active shooter training for the police department. Our police department over the last, 3 years maybe, has been to every school in the district during the summer where all the police officers spend a week, not a full week with all the officers, they rotated it out, in every building, looking at every nook and cranny of the building, learning where everything is, and then do a live drill where we shut off the street, we set up a command center, we have a shooter in the building, and the police come through and they find the shooter. We've done that at every building over the last 3 years. Now we're going to start round 2. And we're going to go back to the building. And we're going to go back to a building on, hopefully, unless we get more snow, on a professional development day in May, because we're going to include the faculty in it. So the first time we just used staff that works in the summer. Now we're going to include the faculty in some of this training as we'll go back and revisit all the buildings. And we've also, this year and last year, greatly increased our therapeutic programs that we run for students. We started a program called Pathways, where we identify students who really need a little more counseling than what the normal student who may need counseling gets, and we provide, if needed, home counseling, family counseling, and if it goes beyond what our staff can do, we then refer out to outside people. We have insight groups in every building, and we provide a lot of more conversation, intervention for kids who might be at risk for anything. Again, I'm not talking just violence. In fact, violence is often a very small, sometimes not even measurable percentage of the things we do. And that sort of addition to our programs happens every year because I meet monthly with the staff. When I say the staff, the administrative and the therapist, I say, what should we be doing different? What can we do differently? Some of the training we have done, the administrators and teachers, I mentioned the training out in Ohio with the SRO years ago. Homeland Security, we all were trained Homeland Security, a level 1. We all have to get certified by as a Homeland Security training. We, years ago, we brought in a consulting firm. It was called Stonegate. We contracted with them for about 2 or 3 years in the district. It was retired police officers who ran the security of private, because we wanted a fresh pair of eyes to come in and look at all the buildings, look at all our plans, not say, well, you know, this is something I developed and I think it's good, right? We brought people that were not connected. They did a thorough review of the entire district, made suggestions, that gave us a template for manuals to develop for every possible scenario. And since they were with us, we have used those and working with the local authorities to build on and add to and improve. The Stonegate folks also provided training to our faculty and staff who was here at the time, and that training now is done by administrators, Rutherford Police Department, Rutherford Fire Department, Bergen County OEM. At my monthly meetings with superintendents, we have at least 2 times a year, we bring in outside professional security folks who get us up to state of the art of whatever new thing is that we can add or what we should be looking for, how we should handle it. With our students, we have great appropriate meetings and assemblies, not just the first day of school year, but repeated. I observed a class in Pierpont on, I think it was January 30th. I just wanted to do a normal classroom observation of the teacher doing a lesson. I lost track in my mind of this was a day that it was a new quarter beginning. So the teacher had, it wasn't a very kind thing to do, right? I walked into the class. That teacher went over every security drill with the students. Lockdown, fire drill, evacuation, where to go. So every time a new student comes in, or they get the assistant principal, someone reviews it with them. When a new class comes, whether a semester or a course, they get a review. It is paramount in our minds. Once a year, as a minimum, we have to take a look at our plans. We do it more frequently than that. Once a year at a minimum, I have to sit with Chief Russo. We have to go through a rather long memorandum of agreement between the local police and the school district that covers how the police are involved, what our responsibilities are to the police, what they are to us, goes over a review of all our plans. We have to sign off on that. The board has to acknowledge that it was done. We have to report that to the county. As I mentioned, I've been at training in every foreseeable, as have other administrators. If you remember about 2 years ago, swatting became a thing, where fake bomb threats, right? Within, Chief, I don't know, maybe about 5 days, there was a meeting with all the police brass in the county, all the school superintendents, whoever I deemed to send, Bergen Community College. We brought in folks from the state level and the county level to talk about how to deal with it, how to trace it, how to respond to it, what you should do, how you should adjust any of your evacuation plans based on this. Nothing gets by that we don't directly deal with from a source. If something happens somewhere, on my phone, I get updates from the state and county OEM about everything that goes on in the state. Whether it's constant, and it doesn't matter what it is. When the National Guard was deployed in Puerto Rico, I was getting 6, 7 updates a day telling me where our New Jersey National Guard was moving. Okay? Anything that comes across that I think has any impact on us, I either contact Detective Anson, the chief, the building principals, whoever is the person to contact. We have done tabletop exercises. If you're familiar with what those are, you get in a room, they give you a scenario, you have to figure out how you're going to save, how you're going to settle or handle it. And it hasn't just been about school shooting. We did one a few years back with a train derailment, because we buy a train track. The derailment was carrying maybe some kind of liquid that could be noxious or could be poisonous. And we sat with police, fire, ambulance, OEM, and we went through role played how we're going to handle everything. And then the OEM people, they sit and they say, That was done well. That wasn't done well. Why do you think you should have done that? So like I said, we train for almost everything. For those of you that remember, 7 years ago, bank robbery, right across from Union School, shots fired in the street, right? We had to go into a lockdown, shelter in place. There was not one hiccup from the school. It was done immediately. It was done precisely according to the drill. In 1977, I know some of you may not have even been walking around then, when I came into this building to teach English, if you said to me I'd have a card that I'm a member of FEMA, and I'm a member of Homeland Security, and I would have said, what? I'm an English teacher. But we've gone through the training upon training upon training, and we know how to handle what we need to handle, and we know, more importantly, how not to handle what we don't know how to handle. And we're very fortunate to have the police department, the fire department, the public safety people we have here in the district. You probably don't recognize this. We don't think about gangs necessarily. Rather, every one of our administrators by code had to go to gang awareness training. And we have to go and get trained, and we have to recognize certain things, certain signs in terms of dress, colors, slogans, graffiti. It's a requirement. And we have one person who we make a point person of our administrative team. And every year, even though we all had to be trained, he goes for refreshers, and he then turnkeys stuff back to us. Same type of stuff happened with opioids, with drugs, with alcohol. We send people up to the SNAP conference every year the Bergen County runs. Every year there's refreshers and people bring it back. Even something like the carbon monoxide I mentioned before, there used to be carbon monoxide detectors in every building near big sources of potential, like boiler rooms. Now we have them any place that any device could emit carbon monoxide. In this building, we used to have 3 with the boiler rooms. We now have 27. But because we added these new devices, we then brought Fire Marshal into our principals meeting a week or 2 ago, and he reviewed symptoms, signs, what to do, how to handle it, and then we had a discussion about how we're going to revise some of our evacuation plans and so on, should there be a carbon problem. I'm telling you all of this so that you have a sense that we're not blind. We don't just guess at this stuff. And it's not the blind leading the blind. Everything we've done has been either from the federal, state, or local authorities. We have a team of people, and every year they get recertified. They're going to do it back in May. We have a team in every building trained in CPR, trained in using the defibrillator, trained in recognizing signs, and there's a special drill we practice where we call a code. That team runs out, grabs the stuff, and they practice, and they have to get it. There's not, I will tell you, there's not much you can think of that we don't have a plan or a drill for, and that we haven't talked about. In the schools, as you know, remember back when you guys were in school, you had to do 2 fire drills a month. You always knew when it was nice and when it was cold in the winter. If we got 2 warm days in January, you were going out those 2 days back to back, right? Well, that's changed after all this happened. 1 fire drill a month, 1 security drill a month, whether it be a lockdown, an active shooter, a bomb evacuation, shelter in place. It's 1 of each. What's also changed is the police have to be involved in at least 1 of those drills at every school every year. They're often involved in more. They have to be. And their involvement is to help us check that we're doing it right. When I was the principal, when there was a lockdown, I never locked myself down. I used to walk the building. And I'd have my assistant principal walk 1 floor, I walked 1 floor, my head custodian would walk another floor. If the police were here, Officer Anderson, whoever was here, they'd walk a floor. We'd have our radios, and we'd look at every room to see if it was any room we saw something or heard something. And we tried every door to see if they were all locked. That's what goes on. It's not just a drill for the sake of checking it off, we did the drill. And as Detective Anderson can tell you, And anybody who might have been in the building as a student or a teacher about 6 or 7 years ago, when the drill didn't go right, I got on the PA and I let everybody know about it. Because I'm not playing when it comes to your life. We would do drills where we do the lockdown and then right before the period ends, so the bell rings. We want to see who was going to be non-aware to walk out because the bell rang like a Pavlovian dog. When they did, they heard about it. So, and these are not drills that doesn't, now that I'm out of the building, they're still going on. We have drills and we have discussions. Oh, it's great when everybody's sitting in the class and the fire alarm goes off, right? You walk out, you take your roll. What happens when they're changing classes? We have drills for that. How are we going to get accountability for kids when they weren't in Mrs. Smith's class or Mr. Jones's class? And we have a plan and drill for that, and we practice it with the kids. We have our doors marked on the inside. Don't open the door. If a kid opens the door, we suspend the kid. We deal with it very harshly. You're putting 600 people at risk. I don't care if you know the kid. That's somebody's mom. They go through the right channel. They go to the door they're supposed to go to, and they identify themselves. They get greeted, and they come in. I know the chief's going to say this, but when he came on board, he initiated several things with schools. And one of them was daily walkthroughs in every building by the officers who are on duty. They go to every building. I go to buildings, I see them there. They just do a walkthrough. They just walk through the building, say hi to the kids, say hi to the teachers, check things out. If you paid attention to what the governor was saying after the shooting, he was going to mandate, he was going to suggest, right, that in every, well, suggest or probably mandate, that in every district, police do a daily walkthrough. We've been doing it for 4 or 5 years. Not only does it help with security, it helps to spot things that may not be right, but it also helps the students recognize the police officers as people who are here to work with them, for them, and to help them. And you know, we always think big picture, right? The big thing that might happen and we hope never does. But think of all the little things that happen every day. And the involvement that Officer Anderson and the police officers have had in our district for the last 15 years has negated a lot of problems. Because they've gotten to know kids, they've interacted with kids, they've had conversations with kids before something happens on the weekend out on the street. We have phones in every room. We have doors locked from the outside. We want teachers to keep their door always in a locked position. So if their door is open, they just have to pull it. I don't want a teacher in the hallway fumbling for a key to lock a door. Nobody's locked in anymore. All those rules have changed. You can get out of every classroom, right? But if the door is in a locked position, you pull it shut, nobody can get in. So that's what we do on a daily, weekly, yearly basis. And, you know, I understand that your children are your most, I'm a father of 4 kids. I understand, and a grandchild. But they're really, and I say this with sincerity, they're my kids too. I've been here for 41 years. I'm not just here for a cup of coffee, okay? I worry about this place, but I worry productively, which means I figure out ways to make it function well. And one of the things you do have to do is, and I had to do with my own children, and wait till they go to college. You know? Or wait till you have one that becomes an Army Ranger. What you have to do is you have to have that level of belief that we're doing what's our best to keep your kids safe and to keep ourselves safe. I mean, I'm here every day too. It's not just totally, you know, altruistic. I mean, I want to be safe too. I want to go home at night. So we work very hard at this. We do a lot of training. And your teachers do this training. And your administrators do this training. And they go to these workshops. And it's not a thing we talk a lot about because it sounds like we're bragging. And also, there's a lot of things, we're being filmed. There's a lot of things I don't want to say. You know, there's some things where, yeah, we do a drill this way. I don't want everybody to know how we do that drill. Or this is a spot that we're still looking to improve because that could be a little vulnerable. Well, I don't want the whole world to know where there might be a spot that's a little vulnerable. But you have to know that we work on this, and we work on this, and we constantly work on this. So I'm going to let Chief, I'm only 10 minutes longer than usual, which is very good for me, Chief. Yeah? This is like a record, because usually if I'm going to talk for 20 minutes, it's like an hour and a half. So I'm going to let Chief Russo come in and talk a little bit about what the police do, how the police work with us, things that they've been doing from his perspective, and things that he has done personally with his force. Chief?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming out. I mean, it's sad that we have to have this gathering here to talk about these type of issues, but it's also encouraging. You know, only a year and a half ago we did this, and we had 20, 25 people in the audience. So if there is a bright spot that can be pointed out from what happened a month ago down in Parkland, it would be all of you here. What we saw today outside with the students walking around. They made a statement. So hopefully we'll start to see some changes. What I'd like to do, basically going to explain the best I can what we do as a police department in reference to the schools. I'll also introduce my SRO for those of you who don't know him. Obviously, there are certain things that we do in the police department pertaining to school security that we can't discuss, and I don't feel comfortable discussing. But for the most part, I can disclose everything, and you should know. I know Jack stole my thunder on a few of those things, but promised me he wasn't going to do that, but he did. You have to understand that, you know, it's a smaller community geographically, 1.5 miles wide, but we have 7 schools here, and we're a 40-member police department. And when I took over in 2013, we did start these initiatives in the school because school safety, to me, is the #1 priority, not just for the students' well-being and the parents that are involved in some of these issues, but the school, the staff, the police department, and the borough in general. If something like what happened in Parkland were to happen here, it's going to change everyone's lives. It's going to change this borough forever. And that's not something I'm willing to see happen. So we're going to do everything in our power not to allow that to happen. What I can assure you is that the Rutherford Police Department, the 40 members there, are all tremendous individuals. And their #1 priority as well is the safety of our schools. A number of our officers have kids throughout the schools here, but many of them don't. I don't have any children, but there's no better cause for me than to see our Rutherford students do well and move on to bigger and better things like they always seem to do. So just rest assured that, regardless of what you read about some of these other incidents, and I know nothing is for certain, but I can assure you that, God forbid we have an incident like that here in Rutherford, my officers are going to be tripping over one another to get into these schools to neutralize these threats and make sure everyone's safe. So with that, I know Jack mentioned that we do school checks every day. The rationale behind that has to do with our officers being seen on a daily basis by parents, by the students, by the teachers, to the point where when they pull up front in a police car during class isn't stopping, all the students aren't looking out to see what's going on. It needs to be routine, yet, like I tell my officers, not routine. They're mandated, every single officer is mandated every shift to get into every single school every day. The only other mandate I have is that it's not routine. You're not going to go in at the same exact time every day. I want you going in there at different times and spend as much time as you want in there. Obviously, if we have a heavy call load that day, it's going to be a quick visit in and out, make sure everything is okay. But if it's a slow day, I expect the officers to walk around, say hello, have themselves be seen by the staff. But an additional benefit for that is we get to familiarize ourselves with the school, with the layout. God forbid we were to have an incident here. And we are seeing that part of the process pay off in our school shooter training that we do, our active shooter training. These schools are massive. And unfortunately, I'm not on the road too much anymore. I'm in an office. And when I do the school shooter training, when I got into this building, I couldn't believe it. I graduated in 1992, and portions of this building weren't even here then. So it makes sense for our guys to get in the building. But most importantly, it's to create that comfort level between the police and the students. That's a huge step forward for our department. Also, you may see vehicles parked outside, police cars parked outside. When officers we have the capability of doing reports in our police cars, and I've requested them to, when they are doing reports in the cars, to do them on in a school lot or in front of a school. So don't be alarmed if you see a police car parked in front of the school, because odds are it's one of my officers doing a walkthrough, or it's one of my officers doing a report in front of the school, or checking in on the SRO if he has some information that he has to give to us back to the dispatch desk. Another issue that we deal with are the drop-offs and the pickups. I know I'm a bit strict on that, and I seem to, every time I get a chance, I try and blast it out on our social media at the beginning of the school years. It's imperative that we don't clog the drop-off and the pickup areas around the school. Not only because it's not safe for the students to be running in between cars, but God forbid something happens during that time, it makes it that much more difficult for us to get there and do what we have to do. So just keep that in mind. It's not a personal thing. We don't enjoy writing our parents' tickets around the schools, but sometimes it gets to the point that that's what we have to do. But just keep that in mind, that if you see that traffic build up there, you could be preventing our response for an issue. We have all of our keys. We've had Jack get a master key for all the buildings. So now every police officer, every police vehicle set of keys has a key to every door in the schools. So when we get here and we practice that in our training, we can get right into the schools without an issue. That leads me to our active shooter training. This was something that we really started to ramp up a few years back. I've gotten some very good help on the borough end. The local officials have dedicated a lot of funding to me for it, because it's a very expensive venture to get all of my department in on the days off to have this training. But we do 2 weeks every summer. We're in every school now. We do a live scenario, which I believe we're going to try and get done in May during a workshop day. That way the teachers are here and they can participate in that. So what we're going to do is actually have an event. My patrol officers won't know about it. They'll know there's going to be an event that day, but they're not going to know when it's going to happen. We'll respond. We've done it once before as well. We'll respond. We'll have fire personnel, DPW personnel, ambulance corps. Everyone's going to respond as if it's an actual event. We set up command posts. We get the county involved. We notify all the local jurisdictions, because we're actually transmitting over the radio bands, so nobody thinks it's a real event. But We did this 2 years ago, and it was a tremendous learning experience. I mean, we actually saw a few things that we did wrong that we weren't even contemplating. So it opens our eyes in that aspect, and I'm sure it's going to again. We corrected those issues that we saw last time, but I'm sure a few things will pop up. But again, it helps us train with some of these other agencies that we don't really deal with when we practice our 2 weeks in the schools. Our 2 weeks that we do in the schools during the summer are pretty intense. I have to say, I have a Detective Sergeant, Tommy Lewis, my Lieutenant, Sean Farrell, and our SRO, Detective Anderson. They are the three officers that are dedicated to this, and you're not going to find three police officers anywhere in this nation that are more knowledgeable, more into this than these guys. And it's been seen because I've sent my department to train with the state police at MetLife. They do an active shooter training, and people come from all over the state. And our guys always are the #1 crew down there. They watch all these other towns, and they're running around in circles. And our guys get in, they do their job, and they get out. And it has been brought to my attention, not only from my officers that were down there watching it, but also the state troopers that run it down there. So they're doing something right, and they're getting that message across to our officers that are going to be responding here in town. Also, when I see these officers, the training, it's a different person than I see every single day in the office responding to a motor vehicle accident or a domestic dispute. I mean, we started out with fake glue guns, but now we actually use simunitions. We put full protective on them. We're actually shooting at each other. But to see the intensity and the desire that the officers have going into these training sessions, it makes me proud, and it should, you guys should feel very comfortable about that. Although it's uncomfortable to think about, feel comfortable about who's responding to take care of the kids. And additionally, we have our SRO that we brought back in 2013, 2014. I'm going to introduce him just to say a few words. He can explain to any of you who don't know him what he does in our schools. But a tremendous asset. The SRO program is a home run. When they developed that program, they did a great thing. And having Al in the schools, being able to interact with our students, being able to address some issues, nip them in the bud before they become issues, it's just been tremendous for us as a police department, but also for the students that he's assisting. So I just want to have him introduce himself.
Good evening. Wow. Look at all this. Ms. Delgado, thank you. You did what you said. You got a whole bunch of people here. The last time we did this, like the chief said, it was only like 25 people. So this makes me happy because of my passion about making sure our kids are safe. Because it needs to also be reinforced at home. This has to be reinforced at home. So when I have the angry, grumpy face that some may have seen, it's because I have gray in my facial hair now, and I never had that. And it's a little bothersome, but it's really for us. What I do every day is try to teach our kids. I said our kids how to be safe. If your child is anxious by nature, there are a lot of kids that are anxious because they're hearing parents, they're hearing the news, they're hearing that, wow, it's just not safe in America. We got to fix that. So there's things that are very, that I personally work with every student assistance counselor in this district. So if your child is a little nervous, and quite frankly, they probably are because I'm sure most of you are nervous. Is that a fair statement? Right? So let's not forget that they're also nervous because they're hearing us talk to our friends, right? They're watching the news, even though they're not watching, right? And they're hearing all this bad stuff that's happening. So we need to utilize those student assistance counselors because I can tell you something. Personally, I have children in the school district, and I would send my kids to these student assistance counselors. All right? And I'm very, very confident in their ability. So, one of the things that I do, I get to wear a lot of different hats, right? So, yes, I carry a gun, handcuffs, extra magazines, and you can't see it even with my stomach the way it is these days. But one of the main things I do is I interact with our kids. It's a simple thing sometimes is, hey, Johnny, how's it going today? Depending on what Johnny says, determines whether I keep walking or do I turn around and have more of a conversation with Johnny. Because that's the only way that I can really see what mood they're in, if something's going on. And, you know, there was a slogan that was going on in rap music, snitches get stitches and stuff like that, right? Don't be a rat, right? So I have to break those barriers down because a lot of kids need to understand if you're telling him, if you're reporting something, you're not telling on someone. You're actually saving someone. And I mean the person who may be making the mistake. Because when you turn 18, you're an adult. But as a juvenile, our job is to rehabilitate, not necessarily punish. So we want to fix that. And we do a better job by doing that as a community, because that's what this is. We're lucky enough to be in a small town like Rutherford. The only way that we're good is if all of us work together. That's it. So, also I'm security minded. Like you said, I'm with the other two, the lieutenant and the sergeant, and we train. I've been teaching at the Bergen County Police Academy for 20 years. I teach self-defense, and I teach all the tactical stuff, the cool, you know. Right? So I was very skeptical in the beginning when we decided to do the training, but I was pleasantly surprised because everybody took it serious. You know, in the beginning we had a little red gun, it's a toy. But their facial expression and their a little bit of nervousness was there, which means they were taking it seriously, which made me very happy because that's who's gonna come while I'm in the building, right? Because I don't get the chance to run away. I'm going to a threat, if there is a threat. I'm gonna be the guy that's gonna go there. And I am getting older, but I'm not that old, right? So when Mr. Hurley mentioned you get days of suspension for opening a door for another kid, yeah, that's important. Because one of the things that we did do right, as parents, we raised polite kids. So if they open a door for one of their friends and someone's behind them, they're not going to stop that person because they're polite. So we need to make sure that the opportunity is not there. So that's the stuff I was talking about, making sure we teach our kids. And I can't believe they're going to, well, let's really think about the school rules that are put in place, even though we may not agree with all of them. But there's a reason why they're there. Cell phones should be turned off. Now, everybody's pretty much one-to-one with the Chromebooks or whatever. So you don't necessarily need your cell phones anymore for class. But if you did, okay, that'll be an opportunity to turn it on. But cell phones should be turned off. Because if something were to happen, like the bank robbery, right? It was a bank robbery. Union School went to lockdown. People found out that this was happening. Some people called the kids. Even if your phone is on vibrate, today, that is a regular sound. It is acknowledged that the phone is in the room. Right? You don't see a phone, you see it in movies now, right? See it in movies? Everybody knows exactly what that is. So it won't change. And the reason why the lockdown is very important, they're not to be seen or heard. Not seen or heard. My wife, I'm sure, would probably freak out and call my daughter. I know she's in here somewhere. I'm sorry, babe. But I'm sure she would probably do that, right? And it's a very difficult thing for us to, as parents, to not do. But I can tell you, if you find out that your phone call was a reason why something happened to the children that were in that room, I don't think anybody can deal with that, right? So the other thing is we really have a little bit of an issue. The security part of the drop-off and pickup zone, that's also our opportunity as police to see if there's someone hanging around. See if someone's suspicious. If there's cars double parked and having kids walk across the lane of travel, how can we really, truly assess that situation? Sometimes we do drop off our kids. And sometimes we do see someone that makes you say, Then you drive home and you think about it again. Guess what? The first warrants a phone call. It's easier for us to say, I'm sorry for the inconvenience, sir and ma'am, than it is for us to say, who saw the suspicious vehicle? Sometimes someone, if they were to try to do harm, they're going to have to do their own surveillance. You know how a shark doesn't just go up and gobble you up? It circles first, taking in information, then it'll bump you to see if you're a threat. Well, that bump is the person standing outside of school taking a picture. That bump is someone writing down information to see what times things are happening. That bump, when I approach the person, makes them say, whoop, maybe I better go somewhere else. Everybody get it? I think that's it. So, I thank you all so much for being here tonight because it matters. All right? Let's do our job. Let's all do our job and make sure our kids are safe.
Thank you, Al. All right, moving forward, what are we going to do? I think that's the big unknown. That's the big question. I'm going to make a few statements, some of my feelings, some of my perceptions. I'm going to open it up for questions. I think that's going to be the best learning ability here. I'm not going to dodge any questions. I'll tell you right now, I might not have the answer to all of them, or you may not like my answer. But all I can assure you is I'm going to be honest with you 100%. And hopefully what we get out of tonight is safer schools here in London. I've been consumed by these shootings since they happened. And then even more so in 2013 when I took this position because of all the associated issues that I spoke about earlier. My officers, well-being, students, the town, so so it's this parkland is not something new, although some of the issues that are coming up are specific to that event. But these shootings, whether they're in schools, Las Vegas, or anywhere, it's a major concern for us. I think whatever action we take has to be evidence-based, and it can't be a knee-jerk reaction. Because because that never works out. We really need to understand what's going on. Is it a gun control issue? Is it a mental health issue? You have both sides of the spectrum. I'm going to say yes, it is both. And probably even more issues: domestic violence, upbringing, social media. I think they are all contributing to what we're seeing. Without a doubt, it's a societal issue. The guns definitely come into play. The AR-15s that was just used in Parkland and in Las Vegas. You know, I'm a Second Amendment. I believe in the Second Amendment. I have guns of my own, but I think guns like that are just they're weapons of war, and they're pointless. So by getting rid of them, are they going to stop school shootings? No. But are they going to give us a better chance and maybe reduce some of the casualties? Absolutely. So that would be a step in the right direction. But like I said, we have to look at everything. We have to look at the mental health. And we have to determine why these individuals are doing what they're doing. In my opinion, it has a lot to do with upbringing, parental issues. Social media is a big one. I mean, you can be radicalized on the internet. You can learn how to build a bomb on the internet. You can learn how to take your life on the internet. You can learn how to take someone else's life on the internet simply by doing a Google search. That is just hard to fathom. It's unbelievable. So you can't blame these people for what's going on. I mean, they are a product of society. I mentioned it to Jack and Al just recently. I read about this Wingman program, and it was started by Dylan Hockley's parents, the father. He was a young autistic child that was killed in the Sandy Hook shootings. And the whole premise behind the Wingman, which kind of, sat well with me, was our schools need to be more inclusive. And that's going to prevent a lot of what you're seeing. You can't allow the bullying. You can't allow someone, whether it's a different race, different ethnicity, whether they're autistic or have some other type of disability, be looked upon as someone different. Everyone in these schools, they have to be accepting of one another. I think by doing that, and that starts at home, by the way, but by enabling that, I think we are putting ourselves in a better position not to have one of these incidents occur. Because like I said, I can't comprehend why they do it or how they can actually bring themselves to do it. But we're seeing time and time again that it's happening. So something has to happen. I received a few emails. I reviewed a few emails that Al received on requests from parents. Some of them had validity. Some of them were just, they can't be done. And it's like metal detectors. There was a request to have metal detectors put at the school. The idea itself is great. You don't let any weapons into the schools, but take out active shooter possibilities. We have not had any issues in these schools. Out of all of our schools, since I've been chief, I think we may have had 1 or 2 pocket knives taken into school. That's it. And that's what the metal detectors are for. Those are for schools where people are seeing, where districts are seeing incidents of violence within their schools, not active shooter related. In my opinion, a metal detector creates an environment or a target for an active shooter, because you're going to have students lined up trying to get through a metal detector, and make the job easier. And some of these things can be debated back and forth. I'm just giving you my opinion, my honest opinion on some of these requests. Armed personnel in the schools. Obviously, if I could clone Al 6 more times, we would be in terrific shape, but I can't do that. the state has, or actually, I have one more officer going to go into training as a SRO in anticipation of him eventually leaving someday. But I don't foresee me being able to get 2 officers dedicated to the schools. I would like to, and I'm going to keep trying to do it, but I don't think that's going to happen. The state has just allowed the new SLEO, Special Law Enforcement Officer, Class 3. That's another option. I'm looking into it. I'm not completely sold on it. Obviously, to get an armed officer in every school, there is a significant cost associated with that. And obviously, you don't want to weigh safety versus finance, but it is something that has to be said. If I could put a police officer in every school, I would. But that would eat up 50% of my budget. So the SLEO 3s are part-timers. They cost a lot less. I could discuss with the school board how to fund it. However, like I said, I'm not completely sold on it. They have to be retired police officers below the age of 65, part-time, and willing to sit in school to prevent active school shootings. I just think that my applicant pool is not going to be sufficient enough to staff it. But I will do my due diligence, and I will look into it. Absolutely.
One of the things that I want to commend the chief, and going back forever with Rutherford Police, is how quickly they respond. And we had an incident today we needed an ambulance in one of our schools for a student who got ill. And the principal told me he called police to get the ambulance. He left his office, because he got on the radio, to walk around the hall. And by the time he turned the corner, the officer was coming to the door. Got here in about 1 minute and 20 seconds. When we have had the police come, I can attest for being here, they're here in about 1.5 minutes to 2 minutes. So my theory when I was the building principal, and what I discuss with the principals now, is we have to have a solid plan to hold the fort for about 2 minutes. We're not out in the middle of nowhere. And I would also say to you, did you hear how the chief and how Detective Anderson described the active shooting drill? Police come in armored with automatic weapons, rifles, trained for weeks and weeks and weeks. So think about some of the rhetoric out there about let's give a teacher a gun. Just think about that. Think about some of the teachers you have. Okay? You notice I didn't say teachers we currently have. I said teachers you have. Some of you had, when I hear him going like this, because he's going to retire soon, and he was my student, that really bugs me. And then he makes fun of the gray beard, too. I'm not a big fan of that comment either. But you see where the point I'm getting at? An armed guard with a pistol in a hallway compared to, in 1 minute to 2, highly trained specialists coming in the door. So it's not just cost, it's reality of what is going to be the best approach to take. That's what I said earlier. We can't be reactive. We have to be proactive. And I have never been concerned about the response we would get. And in a real emergency, we'd get it from Lyndhurst, we'd get it from East Rutherford, we'd get it from Carlstadt. I've always felt that my job as principal was keep as many people safe and protected for 1 minute or 2. So I just wanted to add that.
Yep. And 2 years ago, when we did the live scenario, just to go back to the active shooter briefly, real quickly, that was when patrol was doing their normal day, answering their calls. They did not know when the call was going to happen. That was when we actually had to go in with 4 officers. They've changed it. Now we go in with 2. and I'm pretty certain the first person on scene is going to go in, and it's going to be against policy. But it's one of those things where, you know, if I was the first guy on scene, I'm going in as well. It's just that's what it is. But back 2 years ago, that response for the 4 officers was just that 1 minute. So I can assure you that you're going to have a quick response if we have an event in the schools. The guys know it. They know to step it up a little bit. And so very different from what you're seeing in some of these other schools like Parkland, down in Florida, and a couple of the other ones. These are large sheriff's departments that are responsible for huge geographic areas. And you know, a normal domestic call, they're 10, 15 minutes out. So try not to be swayed by what you see in the news. We are a very small area, well-staffed during the day with our detectives, traffic, and patrol, plus administration. We'll be here in under a minute, and we'll be in the schools as well. Getting back to the 2 things that I think are most important, and that was the parental oversight and the more inclusive environments that, you know, we can help with and we can do our part. Obviously, we are responsible for the response for an incident. That's what we hone our skills on. That's what we're expected to do. We're expected to do that alone. However, the prevention of an active shooter needs to be a team effort. It needs to be the community, the parents, the teachers, and law enforcement together. And that, in my opinion, is going to be the key to preventing these issues. I know it's difficult. Parents have some difficult times. I know teachers may even have issues trying to relay information to the police or to their teachers about something that they seem is off, or a fellow student who they may suspect of doing something, because they don't want to be labeled as a racist or, you know, bully, or just being wrong and being held responsible for it. And I think for that, a lot of students and parents don't mention something that they know, or something that they feel. So I was thinking about it the other day. I said, how do I get these parents or students to talk to us a little bit more? I know Al has set up that environment in the schools, and that's good, but I want to take it an additional step further. So I'm actually looking to get an anonymous tip app, because I believe social media and smartphones are the way to go, as opposed to the old tip lines where you had to dial in. Those are archaic, and nobody even utilizes it anymore. So I'm going to try and get an app, whether it's 411 or an enhanced portion of the NICSEL program that we use, that citizens, students, parents, anyone can provide anonymous tips to us. And I think that will help you as parents feel a little more comfortable, and us as law enforcement feel that we're doing all that we can possibly. With that, I'd like to maybe open it up for questions, because I know I may be missing a few things, or there may be something a little bit more important that you all want to talk about. So have at it. Sir, in the back.
If that were to happen, and again, we wouldn't want to announce it now. So if someone plans something here tomorrow, then they're over at the place where we're sending them to. We would be using our Connect 5 system, and you'd be getting emails, phone calls, and Twitter blast to give you all that information. We do have a location that we've talked about for every school. We also have an evacuation site, which we drill. The kids go to those sites. That may or may not be the site we would use in an active shooter because of security, but that's part of our plan. But I hope you understand why I don't want to announce it ahead of time, because we don't even like to the kids know when they get moved from this school to that school, or this school to that church on an evacuation drill. They know that. But we also have a second site for every site because we wouldn't want somebody. There was a shooting in Kentucky, maybe shortly after Columbine, where the shooter did that. He created a situation where they evacuated, and he waited there for them to come to the evacuation site. So that's covered. You'll get notified through the alert system, which now we blast to Twitter, email, cell phone, home phone. We get it out. And the police would also be putting it out on their alert.
Yeah, definitely follow us on Twitter. We're going to enhance our social media presence as well. We're going to get a Facebook page. We utilize Nixle now, which is great. So follow us on Nixle, follow us on Twitter. And we would get that information out ASAP. But definitely, you hit the nail on the head. Don't go to the scene because it just creates more chaos and more issues for my officers. The first 2 officers are going right in the building. The next officer on scene setting up a command post. Everyone else, including the mutual aid surrounding towns, they're going to be setting up a perimeter. So don't try to get past them. Don't try and get into the scene. There's nothing that you can do at that scene that we can't provide for them.
And if I could just
I hate to see you get hurt as well.
And if I could just add one more thing to reiterate that, don't go to the scene. I know it's hard. I know as a parent it would be hard for me. I want to go back to that phone call. Don't call. There's been people shot because their phone rang in other schools. If you following the news, it was that threat made at Dumont a couple of weeks ago, and they went into lockdown. And I cringed. We didn't talk about the cell phone thing before this. I mean, some of this we talked about what we were going to talk about. I cringed watching the news where they were interviewing parents and kids while I was calling, they were calling. I'm thinking, nobody is saying, the reporter's not saying, not to the parent, but later, best practice says, don't do that. You're putting everybody at risk. And the other thing, our plans are so detailed that in our plans, to go back to your question, we also have locations of where I or the chief would be meeting press, where we would be doing. In other words, we have places in our plan all over. I have to go back and look to remind, because I hope we never have to use them. So for every now and then I go back and revisit because I don't, there's not something we've ever used. We hope we never do, but they're there. We'll get the word out.
As these events happen, we review the after-action reports that are put out by the states and the jurisdictions. And that's how our responses change. It's the best practice. Now we went from 4 to 2. Prior to Columbine, it was wait for SWAT. So what we're seeing now, now that we've honed our skills, we're seeing the communication. Get that communication out. It helps prevent any type of issues, collateral issues that we deal with parents, press, and so forth. So that's what we're doing. That's what we're trying to get our staff to know as well. If they're the guys running the desk, it's a nightmare up there when these incidents happen, but you got to keep in mind, get the information out.
We have a question.
Not before, but when the kids do the practice drills, shouldn't you, after the drill's done, let the parents know, through an email, so we could talk about the kids? Because, like my son today, he knew I was coming here. He's like, Mom, I had to hide in a cubby. And, he was a little nervous because I guess he didn't do it here. So what do I tell him when he comes home? Shouldn't they send an email that you practiced it? You're not going to say before, you know what I mean? But when they do it.
You're talking about the live scenario?
No, he's talking about the monthly drills.
Oh, okay.
I'll discuss that with the principals the next time, maybe with the principals, what they think about that. I mean, we do 2 a month. Kids are used to it. Some of the things that they do, like the different places to go and hide, I don't think the kids know it's a drill. In fact, one of the things we did, we never really, they know it's a drill, but they don't know it's a drill. One of the things that's important is that you don't always, you don't say it's a drill because you want people to take it seriously. And you don't want them going through the motions. I will tell you, I mentioned before 9/11, ever since 9/11, every drill we've ever done has been much more serious by the kids. It used to be, quite frankly, a joke. Fire drills, people never, now the kids are serious and they're on it and the teachers are. So we never want to let them know it's just a drill. However, when the shooting happened on Valentine's Day, right? It was Valentine's Day. That night, I emailed around 11 o'clock. I wanted to get details. I emailed all the principals, emailed all of our student assistant counselors. I emailed all of our guidance counselors and school psychologists. And it wasn't about a threat in the school. It was about, let's be aware of kids who might be a little fragile tomorrow. Let's be aware of faculty or staff that might be a little fragile. Let's keep our eyes and ears open. And then we followed that up with, if you're going to do a drill the next couple of weeks, break the rule and let them know it's a drill. For this month, because everybody was a little bit nervous. So we're going to say, hey, we're doing a drill today. So it's not like we never let them know that, but I'll bring it up when I meet with the principals, what they think about that, and we'll see where that goes. Okay? Yeah. Right. We're required, though, to do a minimum of 2 lockdowns, 2 shelter-in-places, 2 evacuate, a year. So, again, it becomes not old hat, but what a drill is supposed to be, you're supposed to get comfortable with it. So they will get used to it. But I'll share that with the principals, okay? Your question?
Actually, I have to admit that I came here so concerned about the rhetoric with arming the teacher. So I want to thank you for dismissing this idea. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
My papers are ready to go once the teachers get armed. Because, yeah.
I'm a retired officer, and I work as a school resource officer in Patterson Schools. You mentioned the SLEO program. Just wanted to offer suggestions to contact the Retired PBA Association. They have numerous officers that are retired looking for part-time jobs or full-time jobs that would work back in schools. I'm already working for Patterson, so I'm not looking for the job. I'm just offering tips and suggestions that might help you out and some thoughts.
Thank you.
And the city, I know Totowa Borough, they brought back their retired police officers that still live in town, working at the schools at, like, say, a PBA rate, or not maybe a road job rate, but a reduced rate, say at $30 an hour. Yep. That might be able to help you put another armed officer at a school, because I know you have 1 SRO for 7 schools you mentioned. I mean, it's hard. At Patterson, we have 22 retired police officers now armed in the schools. We're certified school resource officers. They sent us back to the Bergen County Police Academy to get our school resource license. And we work armed in the schools with the administrations, and we're liaisons to the police department. So that might be something you might want to look into.
Thank you. I appreciate that information.
In the back. We have a couple in the back. Yeah. Well, one of the things that I said before, from the school's perspective, we like to study, research, investigate, look at all angles, don't react, right? And we have to look at everything. We have to meet with folks and the experts, and we talk. And there's a point well taken. As I said before, we keep everybody safe, and the cavalry's here in a minute or so. But we don't want to. The one thing we don't do ever on almost any topic is just kick an idea out, right? We talk about it, we look at it, we think about it. And I think the point that you raised, that's why the chief said earlier, we may not come out with agreement on things. What we have to agree upon is that everybody here in this auditorium, and hopefully in this community, has the same end result, keeping everybody safe. So we'll be talking about the pros and cons, like you said. We have a couple of, you want one over there first? We got 2 over here, got 3 over here. Okay.
I have a question about the training that you may need to have with the front office. Today I went to Pierpont School and I rang the bell. And I was ready to hear, who are you? How can I help you? I was let in the school. Nobody at Pierpont knows who I am, staff-wise. I was let in by myself. I'm like, I was scared for my child, because I'm allowed to walk right into this school, right to the front office, which I didn't really know where I was. So it took me about 1.5 minutes to find the front office, believe it or not. And I walked in and I said, hi, I'm here to pick up my son, but how do you know me? And she goes, well, I have a camera. I go, but you don't know me. So why did you let me in? And her answer was, well, it's 12:30, so I assumed you were a parent. But what if I'm a mentally disturbed parent who has a husband or wife working in the school that I may be angry with, and I have a gun in my pocket? But how do you prevent that from happening?
True. Well,
You want me to say?
I know, Jack heard that loud and clearly. In my opinion, in reference to school shooter scenarios, the number one key for us, obviously, what I talked about earlier is with preventing people from getting that way. But if you have someone determined to kill someone else in an active shooter scenario, the best shot you have is to prevent that person from getting into school. It's the entrances that are the most important. I understand your feelings. It's happened to me before at a school, and there was one school that wouldn't let me in, and I was in uniform. So it happens, but it's completely.
Well, yes, and that's really my area to answer. Yes, you should be, and there's protocol, the procedure. And again, I'm not going to say, especially on film, that somebody didn't do it, but I'm going to investigate what you just said. We reviewed the procedure just last week, okay? And I also met when we met ahead of this meeting with Chief about reviewing that procedure and maybe tweaking it a bit going forward in the district. So yes. There should be identification, at least even if it's a verbal, a greeter is what we want, even a verbal, who are you, why are you here? But the second part of your question, just keep this in mind. No matter what you devise or what you do, I can come in and say, I'm a parent, I have an appointment to go see the guidance counselor, everything is all rearranged, and I could be that deranged person you talked about and still walk in. So there's no foolproof way of keeping the person out. However, I've got to know that if something happens, that we did everything we could. And if we're not doing that, I will follow up on that. Okay? Now we have some questions. I don't know who's waiting the longest, or you aren't. Go ahead.
Is there anybody at the doors when the kids are entering the building? Like when they unlock? Like the high school, it's only 4 doors, right? You're not just going into 4 doors, you're going in all these entrances, right?
No, the high school, there's 2 ways, 3 ways to come in the morning. And there's somebody who is there. Now, I'm not going to tell you they're there. There's administrative supervisors who are assigned. Right. The most vulnerable time of any school is arrival and dismissal, no matter how you do it. And we do have people that are there. That's why a lot of times, the principals are in some of the elementary schools are outside greeting is to be friendly, but it's really also to see what's going on. The high school, there are people, the supervisors and the administrators. Yeah, but when you were there again, that was back, Tom, when every door was open and, it was a whole different world. There used to be, I'm not exaggerating, I know it's getting late, but I'll tell you, when I was the assistant principal, there was a person who was known as someone who had issues, okay, in the district, right? And she would come in every day, more or less, walk the halls, and the building principal would call me and say, so-and-so's back in the building again, and I'd have to walk and find her. She was a former student of mine, and I'd say, okay, come on, let's walk out. We'd walk out, and I kept saying, why don't we lock the door? Imagine. So, but it was a different world. We didn't think about these things. So it's different. It's not, I'm not lying to you. Like Chief said, we're not going to lie. It's not foolproof. But we do have people that are assigned there. Okay? I'll come back, I promised. We have one here.
I have a quick question, and it's directed specifically for the high school. I wanted to know what, if any, procedures do you have in place that allows for adequate and sufficient dissemination of information to parents upon the occurrence of an event that can be deemed somewhat skeptical or terroristic in nature. And I'm going to direct everyone's attention to an email that I received maybe 2 months ago from the principal of the school. It was very nebulous in nature about something that occurred, that transpired. Don't worry, the administration took care of everything. I received 3 different accounts from parents, one also from my son, who's also a student at the high school, that there were 2 students, I'm not even going to mention gender, that were taken away by the police dressed in camouflage attire with, and this is alleged, I wasn't there, with some sort of material draped over their face. Now, I don't know if this was a copycat incident, but I want to know why that information wasn't disseminated to parents in a timely manner, and if they couldn't do it via email, perhaps why wasn't some sort of roundtable prepared to have the parents hear so that that information could have been at least divulged to us within a timely manner without me having to receive it piecemeal from other individuals? That's my question.
All right. Well, I'm not quite sure about that incident.
Well, I was here that day. I happened to be in the building that day when it happened. And, the information was at the end of the investigation and the interrogation, for lack of a better word, because we took it very seriously and we got the police involved. Even though we did not see it as an extremely credible problem, we still got the police involved. The police, and again, we have to be very cognizant of students' rights of privacy, parents' rights of privacy about what we put out and what we say. And once it was determined by several police officers, detectives, and the administration that it was a non-viable comment that was made, okay? And some of what you heard through the grapevine, I happened to just be here by happenstance that day, is accurate. Some is totally not accurate because it's through the grapevine. We put out a notification so that when people heard rumors about things, they had a sense that this was looked at. And when I say looked at, 3 detectives, 3 school administrators, a student assistance counselor for about 4 or 5 hours, going to the people's homes, okay, do the full, even though it was really something that was said that I'm telling you 4 years ago would have even been dismissed. You have to think if that's your son or daughter who is saying something like just a dopey comment that a kid will make, how much identifying or factual information do you want out there? So we have to guard both sides, okay? And obviously, if it was anything that even smelled like it could have been a real threat, we would have been in lockdown. We were not. We would have been having the police here in full force. We did not. We would have had the students handled a lot differently. But what we need to do now, and Chief talked before, and so did the detective about starting at home, we've got to raise the level of awareness with our students, your children, that things that you or I might have said as kids carry a lot of weight right now. We're calling the cops. They're going to ask you to voluntarily let them search your house for something that you may have said or I may have said in the playground that would have been dismissed. Think about comments that are made about gender, race, ethnicity, that maybe 30 years ago people didn't pay much attention. They pay a lot of attention to it now. We're that way now with, hey, I'm gonna kill you. That's not just a casual adolescent comment anymore. That's the police are coming. Police are calling you saying, do you have any guns at home?
Jack, additionally, we make the decision as well whether we're going to notify parents or the public or put the school in lockdown. You have to have confidence in us that we're making the proper decision there. If we felt that school needed to be locked down, and I believe most of it was after school was closed, but if we feel that the school needs to be locked down, we're going to do it. We're not going to take a chance. Since then, more recently, I've had a discussion with Jack about another incident we had, and I asked him to put the notification out, and he did. He sent out notifications to the parents that we dealt with 2 children in the school. We had an incident today that didn't require any notification. You have to have that confidence in us. You have the right to disagree, and I encourage that. If you don't like what we do, or if you have any questions, if you hear something, I encourage you to call me in my office. Call the desk. We're staffed 24 hours. We can shed some light on what's going on.
And every one of these incidents is really a conversation like the one that the chief just alluded to a couple of weeks ago. I spoke with a detective, the chief, the principal, the assistant principal, probably 7 or 8 times in the course of an hour and a half to make a decision about where are we with this, what should we do, what's the best course to take. So it's not just a knee-jerk reaction by somebody in one office unilaterally. We have one here.
Let me just add something. But also at the end of that letter, it said if you had any questions, contact somebody. Contact him, the principal, right?
Because we could talk to you like face to face or on the phone, and say and assure you of some things better that we could put in a blast that goes out to everybody and could be sent to anybody. And we still have to trust that we're going to protect the confidentiality of the students, but we could certainly have a conversation that we're not putting in writing. I know there's a lot of people waiting. Let's go here.
Hi, Chief, this is for you. During the Parkland shooting, there was apparently some miscommunication between the officers that delayed the response. Have you addressed that issue? And if you have, can you share with us how you would make sure that doesn't happen to our kids?
I've been reading numerous articles about that, and most recently, literally just before I walked in, they released some more tapes about what the SRO was saying to the mutual aid departments that were there. And it sounds like he actually thought that the shooter was outside of the building. Now they're saying communication is a huge part of what's going on there. Obviously, there were some issues down in Parkland, quite a few that are just you can't make an excuse for. It's really sad. I'm confident that our staff, in conjunction with the school staff, have trained enough that we will not put ourselves in that position. But I was actually just reading some of the bullets from Homeland Security that they sent out on that. And, most of them kind of point at failure on the specific officer's part. And that, you can't explain that away. It's just a cop didn't perform well, when he had to. Yeah. Sure. Every incident is different, and you learn from them, and you just can't predict what's going to happen. Look at Sandy Hook. We learned from that. The shooter shot through the window to break it, got in. He literally walked right around one hallway and was in the building right there. The officers that responded on scene responded right to that area. But from what they were hearing the shots. It sounded to them, with the way the window was broken out, that the shots were coming from the roof or around back. And they went all the way around the building to get in to where they started. 7 minutes. That's not a mistake. They were acting on their senses. They were hearing the shots. They were just hearing them wrong. So some of those issues are difficult to explain. Sure. Like I said, I am looking at it, but they're not going to be undercover. They're going to be SROs. The SLEO 3s are trained as SROs. They do action. Yes, it does.
Yes, it does. So you can't have
yeah.
Otherwise, we'll be getting calls.
We're not having. It's not like 21 Jump Street. That doesn't work. No, again, I'm looking into it. There are good arguments on both sides of that aisle. It's one person. He could be off, he could be in the bathroom, he could be on the other side of the building. If an SRO is on the other side of the building here, and we've done it in our active shooter with the live rounds, you go around the hall, you can't hear the shots. They won't even know what's happening. We would probably be here from patrol, from a phone call, before the SRO even knows what happens, if he's not monitoring the radio. Like I said, there are good arguments on both sides of that aisle. Thank you.
I feel better coming here tonight, and I was curious if, maybe not in like the younger kids' schools, but in Pierpont or Union, if you'll have a similar talk with the kids, obviously on a different level, about just being safe, for any of that anxiety.
Officer Anderson meets with large and small group assemblies as a matter of course for years. And I'm sure he still does and will do that. So was that accurate, Al? I mean, Al meets with large groups, small groups of students periodically to review this. So yes, we will do that. And like I said, my message to them back in February was to be more in tune to whether one's needed on a smaller group level.
Do you have any recommendations or any ideas what you would like us to talk about? You would know more than me if you're a parent or if you are a parent of
Yeah, because like at Washington School and Lincoln School, you know, when I talk about lockdown, I say Ricky the Raccoon could get into the building, and we don't want to make sure anything happens to Ricky the Raccoon. So they're not, because I mean, you can literally, even when I say it like that, sometimes I see a 6-year-old and they're looking at me and they're starting to get ready to cry, and I'm like, no, wait, it's okay. But that is what we do. But the main thing is, if you specifically have a child, and this is very, very important, because sometimes if your child is anxious, if I went and I talked to all the other kids, I may make the other kids anxious. It is tricky, but we try to water it down enough where they still can kind of take it seriously, but not be freaked out thinking that somebody's coming into the building. But if you have a child that is anxious, please contact the school assistance counselors, because they will help. They do tremendous work. All right.
I'm sorry, I'm losing my voice, but I was just wondering if the cameras have a live feed to the police department, and if not, is that something that we would be purchasing in the future? I know this technology is available. Surrounding school districts have it.
I like the technology. We actually met with a provider a year or so ago.
Maybe 2.
Yeah, it's great technology. Obviously, I'm in a building that's falling down, so we're in the process of that transition. And I know once that building gets built, you know, we're not going to have keys any longer. It's going to be key swipes, and I'm hoping to do something so it's seamless with the schools. And with that would be camera technology as well. I think it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, we are closer to that upgrade to technology in the district than I think the police were, and we're waiting to get in sync with that, and then we'll be moving forward. Yeah. Got one here. I know there's a lot of questions. I'm sorry. I'm trying.
Hi, so I work at a university in Hoboken, and part of my job is prevention education and working with the college students for bystander intervention. You mentioned it briefly, but I'm interested in hearing about some of the, hopefully, programs that you have in place to talk to the students as they get older about, you mentioned snitching, but about speaking up, about talking about warning signs, about bringing to attention administrators, adults, the SRO, when they are concerned about their friends, when they're seeing things, but they're afraid to say something, because it's hard to do that when they're 18 to 22 years old if they haven't been taught to do that earlier. So I don't know if you have any plans in place for that.
We have a goal in our district in terms of mindfulness and wellness, and every school works on specific activities for kindness, caring, things of that nature. With the older groups, the guidance counselors meet with kids. The clubs the kids are in every club sets community involvement, and we try to do a inward out type of look at community service. So we're working in the district. We talk about the reality of, you see something, say something. I will say that in the last 4 or 5 years, and again, you're in the building every day, Detective, I think we see a lot more of kids who are reaching out because they understand the serious consequences to themselves. And most of the time, see, I will tell you something, and again, I'm not, we're here, everybody has one thing on their mind, violence, right? They're here, but we have such, and knock on wood, we have such little violence of any kind. What the kids have come to the office about, someone's talking about hurting himself. Someone is depressed. Someone, I think, may be doing binge drinking. I mean, they have been doing that for years. And we have a very good culture in our buildings. With the little kids, of course, there's a good culture. As they get older, you're right. It gets a little tougher. But in the middle school and the high school, there's a lot of over things and things that are kind of subtle going on. And our kids, and we have a great community. I mean, I'm telling you, if you could put 700 high school kids out on the street for 17 minutes and not one kid misbehaves. Not one kid says something inappropriately. Not one kid, they walked right by me today. They were saying hello to me. They were all quiet. It was almost like, if you've ever been to Arlington, like the Kennedy's grave, it almost reminded me of that kind of reverence. We have good kids, and it comes from the home, it comes from the community, it comes from the teachers every day in the school. So we work at it and we try to do it subtly, but you're right. It's not snitching, it's helping.
Ma'am,
Right.
Also, if you have any ideas or any programs
share
with the university, feel free to contact me. I know it's part of the SRO curriculum, but the more we can do, the better. Obviously, it needs to be a group effort, again, like I said, starting with the parents, but no doubt we'll do our share.
Yeah, please do that. And tell us too, send it to us. Mr. Tomzak, and then we'll get one over here, one over there.
Absolutely. Again, follow us on Twitter too, because we like to retweet and like a lot of the different safety programs like that, whether it's traffic or school safety issues. And I'm looking to enhance that. I have a new sergeant's position that was created. We're going to try and get our message out and some of these tips the best we can. So that's what we're going to do on our end. As for the all the warning signs that were missed in Parkland, there obviously were. But again, privacy rights come into play. There are children that we've dealt with numerous times, 12, 20 times throughout their lives, but they don't rise to that level where they're being expelled from school or they're being charged criminally. Now, that individual may be thought of as an at-risk individual by classmates or students. But unfortunately, the truth of the matter is our hands are tied sometimes. We can only do so much, as much as the law allows us to do. But if we're getting the information coming into us, I can assure you that we are not blowing it off. And that's some of the issues that we saw down in Florida. They just didn't address the issues. I can assure you when something comes in through our headquarters, it's being looked at. No matter how minor or how serious, it's getting the full attention of the department.
And we're small enough still, you know, we're in a good size where we're big enough to offer a lot of programs and small enough to really get to know people. And if we get a tip on something, we are extremely proactive from the school point of view. And to the chief's point, sometimes it's frustrating. It frustrates me when I read the paper and I see somebody committed a crime and they've been, you know, they were arrested 17 times and they're out in the street, right? But what we also do is we are able to say to our guidance counselors and our SACs, keep an eye on this kid. Meet with them every day or two. Keep eyes on them. So if you see, and this is more, again, not really violence now. I'm talking more about depression, anxiety. Don't let this kid get lost in the shuffle. You have 200 kids to counsel. Make sure you're calling this one down every few days. Officer Anderson, make sure you walk by his room a couple of times. As principal, I used to know the kids who were fragile. I used to make sure I walked by their classroom at least once a day, peeked in, see what they look like that day. If they're looking like they're having a bad day, like Al said before, you reach out to somebody, you give a call. So, sometimes you can't put the heavy hand of the law on someone because they haven't broken the law. But you can certainly be cognizant of who they are, where they are, and what's going on. And I think we try our best to do that. And I think some of it, again, I can't judge what happened based on what I read in the news, but I think some of that did fall through the crackdown. You have time for a couple more? Couple more? Let's, because we have very patient here. Patient, the gentleman in the back, he picked a corner seat, so he has to wait the longest. Everybody in the middle, I wouldn't make it if you remember Phil Donahue. I would have got canceled after 1 year because I'm out.
Okay. I just had a concern about Rutherford High School, the 4 doors. I drop my daughter off in the morning and just a stream of kids coming in and out, everyone opening the door for everybody. I don't really see anybody in there. So that's just my concern, the 4 doors.
Again, as I said before, that's the most vulnerable time. Kids have to get in and out. And I know there are staff, like non-teaching staff, that's supposed to be keeping an open eye. And we do have cameras at the door and they monitor them sometimes. I will revisit that with the principals he can remind folks about that. Well, in the evening, the school we have adults, we have a lot of programs in these schools. And, we keep every door open and we have people all over the place. We have, during the day, so let's say somebody got in the building during the day. There's 120 staff here, 800 kids, a lot of eyes to see somebody, right? At night, it's a problem. We require recreation to have somebody on site as a site manager. They're supposed to walk the hall. The adult school's got somebody in the same avenue. But yeah, that's a concern we do share. And we do work with our custodians, our night custodians, and our staff, things they should be looking for and be on the outlook for. That is a concern, absolutely. One here, okay, and then we'll go one back here.
I have a child in 3rd grade and a soon-to-be kindergartner. How do I talk to them about anything that has to do with this stuff? I don't want to freak her out. Right. I don't want to scare her. I mentioned it last night where I was going because she didn't know what was going on. Like, what do you say?
Well, I have material that we got from our SACs, from Rutgers University about how to talk to children at different ages. And what I'm going to suggest that you do, because it'll be quicker, you'll get done, you'll go home and do it tonight. And me, I'll have to wait. I'm going to a county meeting tomorrow, so I won't even think until 2 o'clock. Emily Bregman, who is the SAC, Student Assistant Counselor for Washington Lincoln School, send her an email and ask her if she could forward to you information about how to talk to your child, and she'll do that. Okay? Do you know her name? Emily Bregman? Bregman, that's the name, Emily Bregman, okay? And if you forward her, and in your email, and ma'am, in your email, if you would say that you were here, you asked a question, and if you say, Mr. Hurley suggested that you do this, you'll probably get a response even quicker. Okay? Okay?
You saved me on that one,
okay.
Jack.
We got the question back here. Answer back here. Well, we closed for the general election. We can't close for other elections that come up because of the number of days of school. We had a conversation many times with the chief and with the borough, and the borough doesn't control polling places, the county does. And if you try to move a polling place, it's hard to find a location to move it and hard to get the approval. One thing we did at Washington School is we changed the location. The county had to come in to approve it to an aspect of the library now where there's going to be a direct in and out from the street. So we made that change for the whatever election in June is coming up next. We talked about maybe getting some police or some volunteers here. What I always did when I was the principal, and I revisited this with the principals last Friday when we met, our monthly meeting, where we have a general monthly meeting, I used to assign, take a clerical assistant out of the office for the day and have her sit at the door where in this building entered. And again, she's not a police officer, I get that. But we gave her, email and a cell phone, and if somebody wandered down, she was going to stop them, and if they didn't stop, she was going to make a call. So even something as benign as that helps. And I asked them to revisit that. And the chief and I have talked countless times about this to come up with a solution.
It's on my radar. I know I mentioned before the day I wasn't allowed into the school in my uniform. That was election day. I was at Lincoln School. They wouldn't let me in, and I watched a guy walk by in front of the office with a John Deere baseball cap on. He had to be like 70 years old. I said, how is it possible? So we've had those discussions. I thought it would be an easy fix, but it's not. It's regulated by the county. So I don't think we're going to be able to change the locations, not going to be able to change the dates. What we're going to have to do on my end is get it staffed.
And what really happens on election day, I mean, I realize anything can happen, right? What we often get without that person sitting there is, and I don't want to say older now because I'm now in that category, they walk through the school. I want to see my old locker. I want to go see how the school changed. It's very, benign, but we don't want people walking through the building. So I mentioned to the principals in the short term, think about putting a staff member there to at least challenge anybody while you walk in. No, please, sir, you got to walk out. And going forward, the chief and I have had this conversation. I've had it with Ms. Scanlon up in the mayor's office as well. But it's not an easy fix. Okay?
We'll get it done, though. One way or the other.
You want to ask, how about we get one more question? Gentleman right there.
Sure. Yeah. Well, if you have children at home, you have to have it locked up. And what everyone needs to know, the gun laws in New Jersey are extremely strict compared to everywhere else in the country. So if you're tuning into these 24-hour news shows and you're listening to all this gun control that's coming down the pike, odds are it's already in place here in New Jersey. But there are laws in place. Adults are responsible for securing their firearms if there are other individuals in the home, without a doubt. Well, I don't know specifically. I believe it's a fourth or third degree crime. I don't know what the penalties would be associated with that, and I don't know the exact particulars with that statute itself. I know it exists, but I believe there might be even an age range with the juvenile. It might be like 15 or 16 years old. But what is the deterrent? It's like any other crime. You have to get caught. And for us to know that you're not locking up your gun properly.
Well, to bring it, and again, I know some of you didn't get a chance to ask questions, but please email me, email the chief, email Detective Anderson, email your building principal, whoever you feel more comfortable with your question, I'll get back to you. Okay, I usually get back within a day. I'll get back to you. And if I don't know the answer, I'll forward it. And if the chief feels I need to get involved, he'll forward it to me. But to bring to closure, what Chief said when he first started talking. This is a multi-layered problem. To your point, it's a societal problem with laws, with people's own personal views and freedoms that we have and freedoms that we don't want to. I mean, it's a big issue. It's not necessarily a school issue. You know, think about, there were 2 horrific shootings and killings in churches, right? In churches. And, you know, it's not just a school issue. The reason why it becomes a school issue, well, because quite frankly, we have the most precious cargo in our buildings. So it's not going to get solved by what a school does, or where it has to be a big picture approach. And that's to your point. Maybe tougher laws, maybe more intelligent laws, right? Maybe more community working together, maybe more understanding, maybe more opening dialogue with those kids who are at risk, right? It's not just as easy as putting a guard in a building. There's more to it than that, because there was a guard in that building, right? So it's not, I'm not saying it's not an answer, but there is no the answer, right? I know we've talked about a lot of serious and, you know, scary things. So hopefully we tried to make you feel not scared, that we're on top of things and we're working on it. And I don't say this, I wasn't even going to say it, but, you know, once I'm going for 2 hours, my filter comes off. We are no less safe or more safe today than we were on February 13th. Something horrific happened 2,000 miles away. Everything I talked about tonight, everything the chief talked about tonight, Detective Anderson talked about, was in place before anything happened. This didn't happen because of what happened. What it does is, you know, when I said this to the principals the other day, we've all had someone, I'm sure, close to us in our life, right, pass away. And when someone dies, especially if they're young, we all say the same thing. I'm not going to let the little things bother me anymore. You know, life's too short. I'm going to live each day with a different attitude. And that lasts about 2 weeks. And then you're honking your horn at the guy who's taking your parking spot, and you're worried about, you know. Well, sometimes on a much more serious nature, you know, we don't want to ever let our guard down with this. And when these horrible things happen somewhere else, it doesn't mean we're not prepared. It means we wake up and let's go back and really examine what we're doing. And let's see if we can learn from something that we didn't do that we should do, or something that we are doing that maybe we have to change. But I don't want anybody here to think that because something happened down in Florida, that all of a sudden we have a bigger issue than we've ever had before. We have the same issue every day. That issue is keeping your kids safe. Okay? And that hasn't changed. It hasn't gotten more severe or less severe. But what it's done is reawakens us a little bit to let's get this in the forefront. Let's make sure there isn't something we're missing. Let's not get, as a former coach, the worst thing that happens is you get complacent. Right? You're winning, everything's going okay. We get complacent, you let your guard down, and a weaker team beats you. We can't ever get complacent. We have to keep doing these revisiting and retooling, and we study these other incidents not because we're worried they're going to happen here, because we want to be prepared in case they ever do. Okay? So, again, I'm sorry we didn't get your question. It is 9 o'clock. We're going to come to a closure. You can email us. I really thank the chief and SRO for being here. And I thank all of you for being here, and have a good night, and let's work all together. Let's keep everybody safe, right? Thank you.
Thank you all.